Have you ever wondered why jealousy creeps into your life even when you try to stay positive? Why do we sometimes compare ourselves to others and end up feeling less instead of more? And most importantly, what if I told you there are simple habits that can protect you from jealousy and turn it into growth? Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more tools to strengthen your mind and elevate your life. 1. Starting the day with gratitude. Jealousy often begins the moment we forget what we already have. That's why gratitude is one of the most powerful shields against envy. When you wake up and immediately acknowledge 3 things you're grateful for: your health, your relationships, or even just the opportunity to start fresh, you shift your mind away from what's missing and toward what's abundant. Gratitude transforms the mindset of scarcity into one of fullness. Each day started in this way builds a stronger defense against negative comparison. Gratitude is not just a fleeting feeling, it's a discipline. When practiced consistently, it reshapes the way we perceive the world. Many people roll out of bed and immediately check their phones, exposing themselves to a flood of comparisons. Who traveled? Who bought something new? Who is celebrating some success? Before the day even begins, envy has already planted its seed. But if instead the first action of the morning is pausing to recognize what is already present, the entire trajectory of the day changes. That pause is an act of resistance, a refusal to let comparison set the tone. It is, in a sense, a quiet rebellion against the culture of envy. The Stoics often reminded themselves each morning of the simple gift of waking up. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, urged himself to greet the day by acknowledging life itself as a blessing, regardless of what awaited him. In the same way, gratitude grounds us in what is undeniable and present, rather than chasing shadows of what could be. Even small acknowledgments, like having clean water, the ability to move our bodies, or the chance to speak with someone we love, begin to reframe the mind from deficit to abundance. A gratitude practice also trains memory in a healthier direction. Left unchecked, the mind clings more tightly to what is lacking than to what is plentiful. But by writing down or verbalizing what we are thankful for, we anchor those positives more firmly in our awareness. Over time, this builds resilience. When jealousy does appear, it finds no empty space to root itself, because the soil of the mind is already nourished with gratitude. There is also a physiological side. Research has shown that practicing gratitude lowers stress hormones, improves sleep, and strengthens emotional regulation. These physical benefits create a feedback loop. When the body is calmer, the mind compares less. When the mind compares less, the body feels lighter. Gratitude is not simply a moral exercise, but a practical tool to make envy less likely to dominate. And perhaps most importantly, gratitude shifts the way we perceive others. Instead of looking at another person's success as evidence of our lack, we begin to recognize that their achievement does not take away from what we have. Gratitude makes room for abundance to exist in more than one place. If we can wake each day already content with what is in our possession, the rise of someone else becomes less threatening. Jealousy thrives on scarcity. Gratitude proves there is enough. That is why beginning the day with gratitude is so vital. It is not about ignoring ambition or settling for complacency, but about starting from a position of strength rather than weakness. A grateful mind is a fortified mind. Before jealousy even whispers, gratitude has already spoken louder.
2. Tracking your own progress. Jealousy thrives in comparison, but the truth is, your only real competition is yourself. Instead of constantly checking how far someone else has gone, track your own progress. Write down your goals, Document small wins, and measure how far you've come compared to where you started. Every step you record becomes a reminder that you are moving forward in your own lane. Progress, even if small, is the ultimate antidote to envy. One of the reasons envy takes hold so quickly is because human beings naturally compare. They want markers of success, proof of worth, visible signals that their life has meaning. Unfortunately, most of the markers we see belong to others. It's easy to measure ourselves by someone else's highlight reel because those images are so public and so immediate. But when the gaze turns inward, the picture becomes less about competition and more about growth. Tracking your own progress gives you something solid to measure against, your past self. The act of writing down goals and milestones makes progress visible. Otherwise, achievements slip away unnoticed. A person might dismiss their own development simply because it wasn't dramatic enough to stand beside someone else's breakthrough. But if you can open a notebook or file and see the path traced step by step, you recognize advancement for what it is: steady, personal, and meaningful. That recognition alone diminishes jealousy because it makes you aware of how much ground you've covered that others may not even see. The Stoics were clear about this inner measurement. Seneca often reminded himself that philosophy was not about appearing wise in comparison to others, but about being less foolish than he was yesterday. Progress was always self-referenced, not outwardly judged. If each day finds you more patient, more disciplined, or more courageous than before, then progress is real, even if no one applauds. Tracking your growth also builds accountability. Without it, jealousy rushes in to suggest that you are stagnant while others are moving forward. But once you establish a system of measurement, journaling, charts, lists, or even voice memos, you create tangible proof that you are not standing still. Jealousy has no room to argue when the evidence of progress is in front of you. Small wins deserve particular attention. Modern culture celebrates dramatic leaps, but it is the quiet, consistent gains that truly accumulate. Recording even the smallest steps, reading one page of a book, exercising for 10 minutes, making a single difficult phone call becomes a practice of honoring momentum. Over weeks and months, those notes form a record of resilience. And when envy tempts you to believe others are racing ahead, you can return to that record and remember, you too are moving. What makes this practice powerful is that it redefines success as relative to the self, not to society. The person who measures their life only by external standards will always be vulnerable to envy, because there will always be someone ahead. But the one who measures by internal progress carries a shield. Their race is against yesterday, not against the crowd. In that race, any forward motion is victory. The antidote to envy, then, is not to abandon ambition, but to redirect it. By tracking your progress, you build a narrative of growth that belongs to you alone. And in that private narrative, envy has no role to play.
3. Practicing admiration without envy. Instead of letting jealousy poison your thoughts when someone succeeds, train yourself to admire without envy. When you see someone doing well, ask yourself, what can I learn from them? What qualities can I adopt in my own journey? Turning jealousy into admiration allows you to grow instead of shrink. Remember, someone else's light does not dim yours. In fact, their success can inspire you to shine brighter. The heart of envy is misperception, the belief that another's gain equals your loss. This zero-sum mindset convinces people that success is scarce and that the rise of one diminishes the chances of another. But this is a distortion. Life is not a single ladder with limited rungs. It is a vast landscape with many paths. When another person ascends, they are not occupying your place. They are carving their own. Shifting the frame from envy to admiration requires remembering this distinction. admiration without envy is an art, and like any art, it requires practice. The first step is awareness, catching the initial sting of jealousy before it deepens into resentment. The second step is reframing that feeling into curiosity. Instead of asking, why them, you ask, how did they do it? And what can I apply from their example? This reframe converts what could have been poison into nourishment. The same energy that fuels envy can, when redirected, become a source of growth. The Stoics often practiced this by reflecting on virtuous people and treating them as guides. Epictetus urged his students to keep images of admirable figures in mind, not to feel small in comparison, but to have a standard to rise toward. Their achievements were not insults, but invitations. In this way, admiration becomes a form of mentorship, even from afar. When you encounter someone who excels, you are witnessing possibility, proof that a path exists. Of course, admiration does not mean blind praise. It is possible to admire one aspect of a person without endorsing everything about them. Jealousy tends to flatten others into symbols of what we lack, but admiration allows for nuance. You can say, I respect their discipline, but I do not want their lifestyle. Or, I admire their skill, but I will apply it differently in my own journey. This balanced admiration keeps the focus on learning rather than imitation. Practicing admiration also softens relationships. Jealousy isolates, it creates distance, silent rivalry, or bitterness. But admiration builds bridges. When you openly celebrate someone else's success, you create goodwill, strengthen bonds, and remove the hidden poison of comparison. Ironically, this generosity often circles back. Those who admire others sincerely are more likely to be admired in turn. And most importantly, admiration reminds you that light multiplies. Another person's brilliance does not cast you into shadow, it reveals more of the path you might take. The world is not impoverished by others' success, it is enriched. By practicing admiration, you align yourself with abundance rather than scarcity. So when jealousy stirs, pause and ask, what is here for me to learn? What is here for me to admire? In shifting the lens, you trade bitterness for inspiration. You stop shrinking in the presence of others' achievements and instead expand in response to them. And in that expansion, you discover that admiration without envy is not just possible, it is liberating.
4. Reducing time in competitive environments. Jealousy is like fire. It burns hottest when constantly fueled. If you surround yourself with environments where everything is measured in wins, likes, or possessions, jealousy will naturally thrive. In modern life, many of our surroundings are built to encourage constant comparison. Social media platforms thrive on showing curated highlights of other people's lives, their vacations, promotions, relationships, or even small daily moments, polished until they shine brighter than reality. To scroll through such feeds without awareness is to pour oil on the flames of envy. Every image or update whispers a silent question. Why don't I have this? Why am I not there yet? And so, jealousy, subtle at first, grows into a restless dissatisfaction that steals peace. By reducing time in these digital arenas, you starve jealousy of its most consistent food source. The goal is not withdrawal from the world, but discernment, learning which spaces elevate you and which spaces quietly erode your sense of enoughness. Consider also the people you spend time with. Human beings are naturally imitative. We mirror the values, habits, and attitudes of those closest to us. If your circle treats status as the only currency, measuring worth in titles, wealth, or recognition, then jealousy will feel almost unavoidable. In such company,
Conversations easily drift towards subtle boasting, hidden competition, or comparisons disguised as advice. You may leave these interactions feeling less secure than when you arrived, wondering how your life stacks up. To reduce time in competitive environments is not merely about avoiding discomfort, but about preserving inner freedom. By choosing circles that value collaboration, kindness, and growth, you enter spaces where another's success feels less like a threat and more like a shared triumph. Even outside social groups and digital platforms, competitive environments shape us in quiet ways. Workplaces, schools, even neighborhoods can become fields where comparison dominates. Promotions, grades, or the size of one's home often serve as invisible scoreboards, subtly reminding us where we stand. Stoic wisdom suggests asking, does this ranking truly define me, or am I more than these external measures? By reducing time and energy invested in these competitive scoreboards, you reclaim space for what the Stoics called eudaimonia, a flourishing life rooted not in comparison but in virtue. Instead of chasing the shifting winds of recognition, you anchor yourself in values that cannot be taken away: honesty, courage, justice, and self-discipline. Yet, avoidance is only half the story. The real transformation comes when you actively replace competitive spaces with environments that nurture authenticity. Imagine a gathering of friends where achievements are not tallied, but stories are shared. Picture a community where growth is measured not in how far ahead you are of others, but in how consistently you move toward your own ideals. These are the spaces where jealousy weakens, for it finds no fertile soil. A life oriented toward collaboration and service offers fewer hooks for envy to cling to. In such company, you learn that another's light does not diminish your own, and that there is enough room for many to shine. To reduce time in competitive environments is to admit that you are shaped by your surroundings, often more than you realize. It is a form of self-protection, not weakness. Just as a gardener pulls weeds not out of hatred for weeds, but out of love for the flowers, so too do you limit jealous triggers out of care for your peace. Each reduction in competitive exposure is a quiet act of liberation, a step away from envy's grip and closer to contentment. In the end, the fire of jealousy cannot burn long without fuel, and by choosing your environments wisely, you ensure it gradually flickers into ash.
5. Ending the day with reflection. As the day comes to an end, reflection becomes your final tool against jealousy. Night offers a natural pause, a moment where the noise of striving softens and you can turn inward. Reflection is not about scolding yourself for envy or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it is about cultivating the courage to look at your inner life honestly. The Stoics advised examining the day like an accountant reviewing the books. What was gained, what was lost, and what remains unsettled. This quiet audit gives clarity, revealing where jealousy appeared, what provoked it, and how you responded. Awareness is power, for what remains hidden cannot be changed. When you ask yourself, where did I notice envy today? You shine light into the corners of the mind that usually go unexamined. Perhaps it surfaced while scrolling through pictures of a colleague's new home, or hearing a friend casually mention a success. Perhaps it was more subtle, a pang when someone else was praised, or an unease when another seemed more relaxed, more at peace. By naming these moments without judgment, you disarm them. Jealousy grows strongest in silence, but when spoken, if only to yourself, it loses some of its sting. Reflection teaches that envy is not evidence of failure, but of humanity. To feel it is natural. To examine it is wisdom. The second question, what triggered it, moves deeper.
Here you begin to see patterns. Maybe envy always stirs when financial matters arise, or when you feel overlooked in relationships. Maybe it appears when you compare your pace to another's timeline. Identifying these triggers is like discovering the paths along which envy regularly travels. Once you know the roads, you can build gates or choose detours. Triggers are not enemies, but signposts, pointing toward areas where your sense of worth still depends on external measures. The more you understand them, the more freedom you gain to respond differently next time. Finally, ask, how did I respond? This question reveals whether envy shaped your actions or simply passed you by. Did you dwell on it, feeding it with stories of inadequacy, or did you notice it and let it drift away? Perhaps you even allowed it to inspire action, choosing to improve in some area without resentment. Reflection is not about perfect responses, but about growth. Each night you record not just where you stumbled, but also where you stood firm. These small recognitions accumulate, gradually strengthening resilience. Reflection also offers perspective. What seemed urgent in the heat of the day often shrinks under the calm of the evening. The envy that once felt overwhelming may appear almost small when revisited at night. You see that time itself is a teacher, softening sharp emotions. This distance allows you to forgive yourself for feeling envy in the first place, replacing harshness with patience. The Stoics often wrote that no one masters themselves in a single day. Virtue is built by steady practice. Nightly reflection ensures that envy, rather than ruling you, becomes material for growth. To end the day with reflection is to close the circle. The morning may begin with intention, but evening offers correction and renewal. Each reflection is like clearing the slate before sleep, ensuring that envy does not follow you into tomorrow. Over weeks and months, this practice accumulates into a quieter mind, one less disturbed by comparisons. You no longer fear envy, for you have learned to meet it honestly. And honesty, repeated nightly, becomes a shield stronger than denial or repression. Thus, reflection transforms the end of the day into a ritual of freedom. While others may carry envy into their dreams, you learn to set it down, examining it with clarity and leaving it behind. This simple practice, humble and consistent, becomes the quiet architecture of emotional resilience. By ending the day with reflection, you give yourself the gift of beginning tomorrow lighter, clearer, and freer.
Jealousy doesn't have to control your thoughts or steal your peace. By beginning with gratitude, measuring your own progress, admiring instead of envying, limiting competitive spaces, and ending with reflection, you create a jealousy-proof shield for your life. The more you practice these habits, the freer and more confident you'll feel. If this message helped you, don't forget to subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and keep building the best version of yourself every single day.